The dying light of the sunset painted the Montana hills in crimson and gold as Delilah Nelson stumbled into Bannack, her face bruised and her spirit nearly broken. The year was 1867, and the gold rush town was still clinging to its glory days, even as lawlessness threatened to consume it like a wildfire. Blood trickled from a cut on her lip as she made her way down the main street, clutching a small cloth bundle containing everything she owned in the world. The wooden boardwalks creaked beneath her unsteady footsteps, and townsfolk turned to stare at the battered woman in the tattered blue dress. Some looked with pity, others with suspicion, but most quickly averted their eyes and hurried on their way. Delilah didn't blame them. In places like Bannack, folks learned to mind their own business if they wanted to stay alive. She'd learned that lesson too late. The sign for the Goodrich Hotel swung on rusty hinges, and Delilah hesitated at its entrance. She had precious little money, certainly not enough for a proper room, but she needed somewhere to rest before her brother found her. And he would find her. Thomas Nelson never let anything that belonged to him get away. "You look like you could use some help, madam." The voice came from behind her, deep and steady as a mountain stream. Delilah turned, wincing at the pain in her ribs, to find herself facing a tall man with shoulders broad enough to block out the setting sun. His face was partially hidden beneath the shadow of a worn leather hat, but she could make out kind eyes the color of a summer sky and a strong jawline softened by several days' worth of stubble. "I'm fine," she whispered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "No disrespect intended, but you don't look fine." He stepped closer, and she instinctively backed away. He raised his hands, palms out. "I mean no harm. Name's Owen Garrett. I run the livery at the edge of town." Delilah studied him warily. Owen Garrett looked like every other cowboy in Montana Territory: dusty clothes, weather-beaten skin, and calloused hands. But there was something in his eyes, a gentleness that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. "You need a doctor?" he asked, gesturing to her face. "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. Doctors asked questions, and questions led to answers she couldn't afford to give. "I just need somewhere to rest." Owen nodded slowly, as if weighing something in his mind. "Mrs. Fleming runs a boarding house for respectable women. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe." "I can't," Delilah hesitated, shame burning her cheeks. "I don't have much money. Mrs. Fleming's a good woman. She might let you work for your keep." He paused, then added quietly, "And she doesn't ask questions about bruises." Delilah felt tears threatening to spill and blinked them back furiously. Crying wouldn't help anything. It never had. "Thank you," she managed. Owen tipped his hat. "May I escort you there? It's just down the street." Delilah wanted to refuse, to maintain what little independence she had left, but darkness was falling rapidly, and she was in a strange town with nowhere to go. She nodded once, a quick, sharp movement that sent pain lancing through her head. They walked in silence, Delilah keeping a careful distance between them. The main street of Bannack was coming alive with evening activity, miners fresh from their claims, spending hard-earned gold in the saloons, merchants closing up shops, and ladies of the night emerging from their daytime hiding places. Mrs. Fleming's boarding house was a plain two-story building set back from the street, distinguished from its neighbors only by the neat curtains in the windows and the pots of geraniums on the porch. Owen knocked on the door, and a moment later, it opened to reveal a stout woman with iron-gray hair pulled into a severe bun. "Mr. Garrett," she said, her stern face softening slightly. "What brings you here this evening?" "Mrs. Fleming, this lady needs a place to stay," Owen said, stepping aside so the older woman could see Delilah. Mrs. Fleming's sharp eyes took in Delilah's bruised face and disheveled appearance without comment. "I see," she said simply. "Come in, dear." Delilah hesitated, glancing at Owen. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Garrett." He touched the brim of his hat. "My pleasure, Mississippi." "Delilah," she offered, withholding her surname. "Just Delilah. Miss Delilah." He nodded. "If you need anything, the livery's not far. You take care now." As Owen turned to leave, Mrs. Fleming ushered Delilah inside. The house smelled of beeswax and fresh bread, and despite her apprehension, Delilah felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. The older woman led her to a small sitting room and gestured for her to take a seat on a horsehair sofa. "Now then," Mrs. Fleming said, settling into a chair opposite Delilah. I don't pry into my boarder's business, but I do have rules. No men above the first floor, no liquor, and no trouble. I provide breakfast and supper, and there's a washroom at the end of the hall upstairs. I can't pay much, Delilah admitted, but I'm willing to work. Mrs. Fleming studied her for a long moment. Can you cook? Yes, madam. And sew and clean. Good. My hands aren't what they used to be, and I could use help with the cooking and laundry. She named a modest sum for room and board, less than Delilah had feared. You can work off the rest. Relief washed over Delilah. Thank you, Mrs. Fleming. Don't thank me yet. It's hard work. The older woman's face softened slightly. There's stew in the kitchen. You look like you could use a meal. Then I'll show you to your room. After a simple but filling supper, Delilah followed Mrs. Fleming upstairs to a small room under the eaves. It contained a narrow bed, a washstand with a cracked mirror, and a chest of drawers. The window overlooked the back garden, where fireflies were beginning to dance in the gathering dusk. It's not much, Mrs. Fleming said. To Delilah, who had spent the last 2 years of her life living under her brother's tyrannical rule, it looked like paradise. It's perfect. Thank you. Once alone, Delilah placed her bundle on the bed and unwrapped it carefully. Inside were her few possessions: a hairbrush with several broken teeth, a daguerreotype of her parents, a worn Bible, and a small pouch containing the few coins she had managed to hide from Thomas over the years. She changed into her nightdress, wincing as the fabric brushed against her bruises, then knelt beside the bed. Please, she whispered into the quiet room, don't let him find me. Morning came with the crowing of roosters and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Delilah awoke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. Then the memories flooded back: her brother's rage, her desperate flight, the kindness of a stranger with eyes like summer skies. She dressed quickly, choosing her least damaged dress, and made her way downstairs to help with breakfast. The kitchen was already bustling with activity as Mrs. Fleming prepared food for her boarders. There you are, the older woman said. You can start by setting the table. There are 6 of us altogether. Delilah met the other boarders over breakfast: 2 schoolteachers, a milliner, and a young woman who worked as a clerk at the general store. They were polite but not overly curious, though she caught them glancing at her bruises when they thought she wasn't looking. After the meal, Mrs. Fleming set Delilah to washing dishes and cleaning the kitchen while she went to the market. Once alone, Delilah allowed herself to relax slightly. The simple, repetitive tasks were soothing, giving her time to think about what to do next. She couldn't stay in Bannack forever. Thomas would search for her. He was nothing if not persistent. She needed to move on, perhaps to one of the bigger towns like Helena or Virginia City, where she could lose herself among more people. But that would require money, more than the pitiful sum she had squirreled away. Lost in thought, Delilah didn't hear the knock at the back door until it came again, louder this time. She froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Had Thomas found her already? Gathering her courage, she approached the door. Who is it? She called, hating the tremor in her voice. Owen Garrett, Miss Delilah. The tension drained from her body so suddenly that she had to lean against the wall for support. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door to find the cowboy standing on the back step, hat in hand. Mr. Garrett, she said, trying to sound composed. Mrs. Fleming isn't here. Actually, I came to see you, he said. Wanted to make sure you were settling in all right. Delilah was taken aback by his thoughtfulness. That's very kind of you. I'm fine, thank you. Owen shifted his weight from one foot to the other, looking uncharacteristically unsure of himself. I also wanted to ask if you might be looking for work. Beyond what you do for Mrs. Fleming, I mean. Delilah regarded him suspiciously. She'd heard plenty of stories about men offering work to desperate women. As if reading her thoughts, Owen quickly added, It's respectable work. I've got a mare about to foal, and I could use someone with a gentle touch to help keep an eye on her. My usual helper's laid up with a broken leg. I don't know anything about horses, Delilah admitted. You don't need to. Just need to sit with her, watch for signs she's ready, and fetch me when the time comes. He named a sum that made Delilah's eyes widen. It might be tonight, might be a few days. Can't say for sure. Delilah hesitated. The money would help her get closer to leaving Bannack, but she was wary of being alone with a man she barely knew. You can bring one of the other ladies from the boarding house if you'd feel more comfortable, Owen offered, again seeming to guess her concerns. Something about his open face and straightforward manner made Delilah want to trust him. That won't be necessary, she found herself saying. When do you need me? Could you come by the livery after supper? I'll show you what to look for. Yes, I think I can manage that. Owen's face broke into a smile that transformed his features, making him look younger and even more handsome. Thank you, Miss Delilah. I appreciate it. After he left, Delilah returned to her chores, wondering if she had made a mistake. Yet the prospect of earning extra money was too tempting to pass up. If she was careful and saved every penny, she might be able to leave Bannack within a month. The rest of the day passed in a blur of domestic tasks. Mrs. Fleming proved to be a fair employer, strict but not unkind, and the work wasn't nearly as demanding as what Thomas had expected of her. When Delilah mentioned that she would be helping at the livery in the evening, the older woman raised an eyebrow but made no comment beyond advising her to take a lantern. After supper, Delilah made her way to the edge of town where the livery stood, a large barn with an attached smithy and a small cabin that she presumed was Owen's home. The smell of hay, leather, and horses greeted her as she entered the barn. Mr. Garrett, she called. Owen appeared from one of the stalls, wiping his hands on a rag. Miss Delilah, thank you for coming. He led her to a stall where a beautiful chestnut mare stood, her sides swollen with pregnancy. This is Penny, he said, his voice softening as he stroked the horse's neck. She's a first-time mother, so I'm a bit worried about her. Delilah approached cautiously, having had little experience with horses. She's beautiful. She is, and she knows it too. Owen chuckled. She's usually high-spirited, but she's been quieter the past day or so. That's one sign she might be close. He proceeded to show Delilah what to look for changes in the mare's behavior, signs that she was in labor, and how to tell if something was wrong. Delilah listened attentively, asking questions when she didn't understand. You're a quick learner, Owen remarked. I've had to be, Delilah replied, then wished she hadn't when Owen's expression turned curious. Where are you from, Miss Delilah? He asked, his tone casual as he checked Penny's water bucket. Delilah tensed. Back east, she said vaguely. That's a long way to travel alone. Yes, it is. She met his gaze steadily, silently willing him not to press further. After a moment, Owen nodded, as if accepting her reluctance. Well, I'm glad you made it to Bannack. We can always use more civilized folk around here. The tension between them eased, and Owen showed her where she could sit while watching the mare. He brought in a comfortable chair, a lantern, and even a book to help pass the time. I'll be in the cabin, he said, pointing to a door at the far end of the barn that she hadn't noticed before. Just call if anything changes, or if you need me. Left alone with Penny, Delilah settled into the chair with the book, a well-worn copy of The Last of the Mohicans. The mare seemed content, occasionally shifting her weight or nickering softly. The rhythmic sounds of the horses breathing and the distant murmur of the town settling in for the night were oddly comforting. Delilah must have dozed off because she woke with a start to find Owen standing beside her, a steaming cup in his hand. Sorry to wake you, he said, offering her the cup. Thought you might like some coffee. Thank you. She took the cup gratefully, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. How long was I asleep? Not long. Penny's doing fine. Owen pulled up a crate and sat across from her, his own cup cradled in his large hands. They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the occasional snort or shuffle from the mare. May I ask you something, Miss Delilah? Owen said finally. She tensed again, but nodded warily. Who hurt you? The direct question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to deny it, to make up some story about falling or an accident, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, to her horror, she felt tears welling up in her eyes. You don't have to tell me, Owen said quickly. I shouldn't have asked. Delilah wiped at her eyes, angry at herself for this display of weakness. No, I'm sorry. Don't apologize, he said gently. Whoever did that to you is the one who should be sorry. Something in his tone, a quiet anger on her behalf, broke through the walls she had built around herself. My brother, she said softly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. My brother beat me. Owen's face hardened, but his voice remained gentle. Then he's not a real man. The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, made Delilah look up in surprise. Owen's eyes held a mixture of anger and compassion that made her throat tighten with emotion. A real man doesn't raise his hand to a woman, Owen continued, especially not his own sister. Delilah looked down at her hands, twisted together in her lap. He wasn't always like that. After our parents died, something changed in him. He became different, controlling, angry all the time. That's no excuse, Owen said firmly. No, Delilah agreed. It's not. They lapsed into silence again, but it was different now, charged with unspoken emotions. Finally, Owen asked, "Is that why you came to Bannack? To get away from him?" Delilah nodded. "He'll come looking for me, though. He always said no one would ever take what belonged to him." The rage that flashed across Owen's face was so fierce that Delilah instinctively drew back. Seeing her reaction, Owen immediately softened his expression. "You don't belong to anyone, Miss Delilah," he said quietly. "And if your brother comes to Bannack looking for trouble, he'll find more than he bargained for." Before Delilah could respond, Penny let out a distressed whinny. Both of them turned to see the mare pacing restlessly in her stall. "I think it's starting," Owen said, setting down his coffee cup and moving quickly to the stall door. For the next several hours, Delilah forgot about her own troubles as she helped Owen with the foaling. It was messy, exhausting work, but when the tiny foal finally emerged into the world, a gangly-legged colt with a white blaze on his forehead, she felt a surge of joy unlike anything she had experienced in years. "He's beautiful," she whispered, watching as Penny nuzzled her newborn. Owen smiled, his face tired but happy. "That he is. And healthy too, by the looks of him." Dawn was breaking by the time they had cleaned up and ensured that mother and foal were settled. Delilah was bone-tired but oddly content as Owen walked her back to the boarding house. "Thank you for your help," he said, pausing at the gate. "You were braver than most men I know." Delilah flushed at the compliment. "I didn't do much." "You did plenty." Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out several coins. "Here's your pay, as promised." Delilah took the money, already calculating how much closer it brought her to leaving Bannack. Yet for the first time, the thought of moving on didn't fill her with the same urgency it had before. "Will you come back tonight?" Owen asked. "Penny and the colt should be fine, but I'd feel better having someone keep an eye on them while I catch up on some sleep." "Yes," Delilah found herself saying. "I'd like that." As she crawled into her bed that morning, exhausted but strangely exhilarated, Delilah realized that for a few hours, she had forgotten to be afraid. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Delilah spent her days helping Mrs. Fleming and her evenings at the livery, watching over Penny and her colt, whom Owen had named Blaze for the white mark on his forehead. The extra money she earned went into a hidden pocket in her dress, alongside her meager savings. Owen proved to be a patient teacher, showing her how to care for the horses and explaining the workings of the livery. Delilah found that she enjoyed the work, and more importantly, she enjoyed Owen's company. He never pressed her for details about her past, but he was always ready to listen when she felt like talking. Gradually, the bruises on her face faded, though the memories remained. Still, Delilah began to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Perhaps Bannack could be more than just a temporary stop on her journey to somewhere else. Perhaps it could be a beginning. One evening in late June, as they sat outside the livery watching Penny and Blaze in the small paddock, Owen asked, "Do you still plan to leave Bannack?" The question startled Delilah. She had mentioned her plans to move on only once, weeks ago. "I'm not sure anymore," she admitted. "I thought I needed to go somewhere bigger, somewhere I could disappear. And now," she looked at him, this man who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. "Now I'm wondering if running is the only way to be free." Owen was silent for a long moment, his eyes on the horses. "Your brother," he said finally. "Do you think he'll come here?" Delilah's stomach twisted at the thought. "If he can find me, yes. And if he does, he'll try to take me back." She swallowed hard. "He might hurt anyone who gets in his way." Owen's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "You don't have to face him alone, Delilah." It was the first time he had used her name without the formal miss, and the intimacy of it sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. "I can't ask you to put yourself in danger for me," she said. "You're not asking. I'm offering." Owen turned to face her, his expression serious. "I care about what happens to you, Delilah. More than I probably should, given how short a time we've known each other. Delilah felt her heart flutter in her chest. I care about you too, she whispered. Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was calloused from years of hard work, but his touch was gentle. Then let me help you, if the time comes. Delilah looked down at their joined hands, then back up at Owen's face. In that moment, she made a decision. All right, she said, but I hope it never comes to that. The moment was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. They turned to see Mrs. Fleming making her way towards the livery, a rare occurrence that immediately put Delilah on edge. Mrs. Fleming, Owen said, standing to greet the older woman. Is everything all right? There's a man in town asking questions about a young woman matching Delilah's description, Mrs. Fleming said without preamble. Said he's looking for his sister. Delilah felt the blood drain from her face. Thomas, she whispered. Mrs. Fleming nodded grimly. I didn't let on that I knew you, but Bannack's not that big. Won't take him long to find the boarding house. Owen's expression darkened. Delilah, go with Mrs. Fleming. Pack your things and wait for me at the back door. I'll bring a horse. What are you going to do? Delilah asked, fear making her voice sharp. Just going to have a talk with your brother, Owen said, his tone deceptively calm. No, Delilah grabbed his arm. You don't know what he's capable of. And he doesn't know what I'm capable of, Owen replied. Go with Mrs. Fleming. Please. Delilah wanted to argue, but the set of Owen's jaw told her it would be futile. Be careful, she pleaded. Back at the boarding house, Delilah hastily packed her few possessions. Her hands shook so badly that Mrs. Fleming had to help her tie the bundle. That Owen Garrett, the older woman said as they worked, he's a good man. Not many of those left in these parts. I know, Delilah said, her throat tight with unshed tears. He's sweet on you. Delilah paused, a folded dress in her hands. I think I'm sweet on him too. Mrs. Fleming nodded, as if this confirmed something she had long suspected. Then you'd best make sure you both live long enough to do something about it. Your brother, is he armed? Always. Thought as much. Mrs. Fleming reached into a drawer and pulled out a small derringer. Take this. It's not much, but it might give you a chance if things go badly. Delilah stared at the pistol. The thought of using it made her stomach churn, but she took it anyway, tucking it into her pocket. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Fleming said grimly. Let's get you downstairs. They had just reached the kitchen when they heard a commotion from the front of the house, raised voices, then the sound of something breaking. Mrs. Fleming pushed Delilah towards the back door. Go. Now. But before Delilah could reach the door, it burst open, and Thomas Nelson stormed in, his face contorted with rage. There you are, you ungrateful little. That's far enough, Nelson. Owen stood in the doorway behind Thomas, a shotgun leveled at the other man's back. Thomas froze, then slowly turned to face Owen, his hands slightly raised. This doesn't concern you, cowboy, Thomas said, his voice cold with contempt. That's my sister, and she's coming home with me. I don't think she is, Owen replied evenly. Delilah, come over here. Delilah tried to move, but her legs felt rooted to the floor. Thomas's presence filled the room like a toxic fog, bringing back every moment of fear and pain she had endured under his roof. Delilah, Thomas said, his tone shifting to one of wounded brotherly concern. I've been worried sick about you. After mother and father died, you're all the family I have left. Don't listen to him, Owen warned. Just come to me. Thomas's eyes narrowed. I see how it is. You've taken up with this. Wrench hand. Is that why you ran away? To play whore to the first man who showed interest. Owen's finger tightened on the trigger, but Mrs. Fleming's voice cut through the tension. There'll be no bloodshed in my house, gentlemen. Take it outside or settle it with words. Stay out of this, old woman. Thomas snapped, his hand moving to the pistol at his hip. Everything happened at once. Owen surged forward, Mrs. Fleming ducked behind the table, and Delilah, galvanized by the threat to her friends, pulled the derringer from her pocket. Thomas, she shouted, aiming the small pistol at her brother. Don't move. Thomas froze, surprise flickering across his face before it was replaced by a sneer. You won't shoot me, little sister. You don't have the spine for it. Maybe not, Delilah acknowledged, the gun steady in her hand despite her racing heart. But I'll do whatever it takes to keep you from hurting anyone else. Thomas's eyes darted between Delilah and Owen, calculating his odds. You can't hide from me forever, Delilah. You belong with your family. I don't belong to anyone, Delilah said, echoing Owen's words from weeks ago. Least of all you. For a moment, no one moved. Then Thomas made his decision. With a fluid motion born of practice, he drew his pistol and aimed at Owen. Delilah didn't think, she simply acted. The derringer bucked in her hand, the report deafeningly loud in the confined space of the kitchen. Thomas staggered, clutching his shoulder where a dark stain was rapidly spreading. You shot me, he said incredulously, looking at Delilah as if seeing her for the first time. Your own brother. You're not the brother I knew, Delilah said, her voice surprisingly steady. That man died with our parents. Owen moved quickly, kicking Thomas's dropped pistol away and forcing him into a chair. Mrs. Fleming, do you mind fetching the sheriff? I think Mr. Nelson here needs to answer for assault and attempted murder. The next few hours passed in a blur for Delilah. Sheriff Williams arrived, took statements from everyone involved, and arrested Thomas, who continued to insist that he had only come to bring his sister home. Dr. Porter was called to treat Thomas's wound, which proved to be painful but not life-threatening. He'll stand trial here, Sheriff Williams told Delilah as Thomas was led away to the town's small jail. Pulling a gun on folks is serious business, even in Bannack. And from what Mrs. Fleming and Mr. Garrett have told me, there might be other charges back where you came from. Delilah nodded numbly, the reality of what had happened, what she had done, beginning to sink in. She had shot her own brother. The thought made her feel sick, even knowing she had had no choice. Owen stayed by her side throughout, his quiet presence an anchor in the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. When at last they were alone in Mrs. Fleming's kitchen, the mess cleaned up and the night growing old, he asked gently, Are you all right? Delilah shook her head. I don't know. I never thought. I never wanted to hurt anyone. You saved my life, Owen said simply. And maybe your own. He meant to kill me and take you by force. I know. Delilah sighed, suddenly exhausted beyond words. What happens now? That depends, Owen said, reaching for her hand. Do you still want to leave Bannack? Delilah looked at him. This man who had shown her that not all men were like her brother, that there was still kindness and decency in the world. No, she said softly. I don't think I do. Owen's face broke into a smile that warmed her from the inside out. Good, because I was hoping you might consider staying. Permanently. Delilah's breath caught in her throat. What are you saying, Owen? I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, Delilah Nelson. And if you'll give me the chance, I'd like to court you properly. Tears filled Delilah's eyes, but for once, they were tears of happiness. I'd like that very much, she whispered. Owen's trial took place 2 weeks later. Despite his insistence that he had only come to retrieve his runaway sister, the testimony of Owen, Mrs. Fleming, and most damning of all, Delilah herself, painted a very different picture. When Delilah showed the court her back, still marked with the scars from Thomas's belt, a murmur of disgust ran through the courtroom. The judge, a stern man with a reputation for fairness, sentenced Thomas to 5 years in the territorial prison. As the bailiff led him away, Thomas turned to glare at Delilah. This isn't over, he mouthed. But for Delilah, it was over. The fear that had been her constant companion for so long began to recede, like ice melting in the spring sunshine. She continued to work for Mrs. Fleming during the day and help Owen at the livery in the evenings. But now their time together had a new dimension, shared hopes for a future neither had dared to imagine before. Summer turned to fall, and fall to winter. Bannack, nestled in the Montana hills, grew quiet as the mining season ended and many of the transient workers moved on to warmer climates. But for those who remained, life settled into a peaceful rhythm marked by community gatherings, church socials, and quiet evenings by the fire. Owen courted Delilah with old-fashioned propriety, always mindful of her reputation and her past experiences. They took Sunday walks, attended socials together, and spent countless hours simply talking, learning each other's histories, dreams, and fears. Delilah discovered that Owen had come west after the war, seeking a new start away from the devastation that had claimed his family farm in Virginia. He had drifted for a while, working as a ranch hand and occasional lawman, before settling in Bannack and saving enough to buy the livery. I never thought I'd find someone to share it with, he told her as they sat by the fire in his small cabin one December evening. A proper chaperone in the form of Mrs. Fleming dozing in a corner chair. Then you stumbled into town, and everything changed. For the better, I hope, Delilah said, smiling. In every way, Owen assured her, taking her hand in his. Delilah, I know it hasn't been that long, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, and if you'll have me, I want to make a life with you. Delilah's heart swelled with an emotion too big for words. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Owen slipped from his chair to kneel before her, still holding her hand. Delilah Nelson, will you marry me? Yes, she whispered, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. Yes, I will. Their wedding took place on Christmas Day, 1867, in the small church that served the Bannack community. Mrs. Fleming, who had become something of a mother figure to Delilah, gave the bride away. Owen's best man was the blacksmith who shared the livery property, a burly man named Hank who wept unashamedly throughout the ceremony. Delilah wore a simple dress of blue silk that the ladies of the boarding house had helped her make, with winter roses in her hair. Owen, in a new suit that made him look even more handsome than usual, couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle. You are the most beautiful sight I have ever seen, he whispered as she reached him. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt, and when the minister pronounced them man and wife, the small church erupted in cheers. Bannack might be a rough mining town, but its people loved a celebration, especially one that brought together two people who had found each other against all odds. The wedding feast, held at Mrs. Fleming's boarding house, lasted well into the evening. There was dancing and laughter, and more genuine goodwill than Delilah had experienced since her parents were alive. As she and Owen finally made their way to the livery, where Owen had prepared the cabin for their new life together, snow began to fall, soft and silent in the moonlight. Are you happy, Mrs. Garrett? Owen asked, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Happier than I ever thought possible, Delilah replied, her arms around his neck. And a little scared. Owen set her down gently inside the cabin, which was warm and welcoming with a fire blazing in the hearth and fresh curtains at the windows, Delilah's handiwork over the past weeks. Scared of what, my love? Of how much I love you, she admitted. Of losing this happiness. Owen took her face in his hands, his touch as gentle as always. We can't know what the future holds, Delilah. But I promise you this, I will spend every day of my life trying to make you as happy as you've made me. As his lips met hers in a tender kiss, Delilah knew that she had finally found her true home, not in a place, but in the arms of a man who saw her strength even when she couldn't see it herself. Spring came early to Bannack in 1868, bringing with it new life and new possibilities. The livery business flourished as miners and merchants returned to the area, and Owen and Delilah worked side by side, building a reputation for fair dealing and quality care of the animals entrusted to them. Delilah had discovered a talent for breeding horses, her gentle approach and intuitive understanding of the animals proving invaluable. Owen joked that the horses responded better to her than to him, despite his years of experience. They know a kindred spirit when they see one, he told her one evening as they watched a new foal take its first wobbly steps. Strong, beautiful, and determined to thrive despite the odds. Delilah blushed at the comparison but couldn't deny the satisfaction she felt in her work. For the first time in her life, she was doing something because she wanted to, not because she was forced to, and the difference was profound. Their home had expanded too. With business going well, Owen had been able to add a proper bedroom to the cabin, along with a small parlor where Delilah could receive visitors. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs, filled with love and growing dreams. One of those dreams became reality in late April when Delilah discovered she was expecting their first child. The news filled Owen with a joy so boundless that he rode through the main street of Bannack, shouting the announcement to anyone who would listen. You're going to be a wonderful father, Delilah told him that night as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. I hope so, Owen said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. My own father wasn't much of an example. He was often harsh. Delilah turned to face him, surprised by this revelation. Owen rarely spoke of his childhood. You're nothing like that. You're kind and patient. Look how you are with the horses, with the people who work for us. It's different with children, Owen said. But I swear to you, Delilah, our child will never know fear in this house. Only love. I know, she whispered, touching his cheek. That's why I have no doubts at all. As Delilah's pregnancy progressed, the community of Bannack rallied around the young couple. Mrs. Fleming knitted tiny garments. The wives of miners and merchants passed down cradles and baby clothes, and even Sheriff Williams, a confirmed bachelor with a gruff exterior, brought a hand-carved wooden horse as a gift for the unborn child. Never had young uns of my own, he said awkwardly, presenting the toy to Delilah. But if this little one grows up with half your courage, madam, or half Mr. Garrett's decency, we'll all be better for it. The months passed in a glow of anticipation, but as winter approached once more, a shadow fell over their happiness. Word reached Bannack that Thomas Nelson had escaped from prison during a transfer between facilities. No one knew where he had gone, but the news sent a chill through Delilah that had nothing to do with the Montana winter. He won't find us, Owen assured her, though she could see the worry in his eyes. And if he does, he'll have to go through me to get to you. Delilah, now heavily pregnant, tried to push aside her fears and focus on the future. But Thomas's threat, "This isn't over," echoed in her dreams, turning them to nightmares that left her gasping for breath. December brought heavy snows that isolated Bannack from the outside world for days at a time. It was during one such storm, with the wind howling like a banshee and the snow piling up against the cabin walls, that Delilah's labor began. Owen sent one of the livery boys to fetch Mrs. Fleming, who had delivered more babies than anyone else in the territory, and then set about making Delilah as comfortable as possible. The pain was intense, but knowing that Owen was nearby, his strength and love a tangible presence, gave Delilah the courage to face it. After hours of labor that tested the limits of her endurance, Delilah gave birth to a son, a robust boy with a shock of dark hair and eyes the same shade of blue as his father's. "He's perfect," Owen whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his son for the first time. Just like his mother. They named him David, after Delilah's father. As she watched Owen cradle their child with such tenderness, Delilah felt a love so fierce and protective that it took her breath away. In that moment, she knew that she would do anything to keep her family safe. The winter passed without word of Thomas, and gradually, Delilah allowed herself to hope that perhaps he had gone elsewhere, seeking a new life far from Montana. David thrived, growing from a newborn into a curious, laughing baby who was the delight of everyone who knew him. By the time David's first birthday approached, the fear that had gripped Delilah after hearing of Thomas's escape had receded to a dull awareness at the back of her mind. Life was too full, too rich with daily joys and challenges, to dwell on what might never come to pass. Owen and Delilah had expanded their business, adding a small horse breeding operation that was already gaining a reputation for producing strong, intelligent mounts well suited to the demands of the frontier. They had hired additional help, including a young widow named Sarah who helped Delilah with David and the household while Delilah worked with the horses. It was Sarah who came running to the paddock one autumn afternoon, her face pale with fear. "Mrs. Garrett, there's a man at the house asking for you. He says he's your brother." Delilah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Only Owen's quick reflexes kept her from falling as her knees buckled. "Where's David?" she gasped. "With Mrs. Fleming. I took him there before coming to find you, like you always said to do if anything strange happened." Relief washed over Delilah. Mrs. Fleming's boarding house was the safest place in Bannack for her son. "Thank you, Sarah. Go to Sheriff Williams. Tell him Thomas Nelson is here." As Sarah hurried away, Owen took Delilah by the shoulders. "Go to Mrs. Fleming's. Stay with David. I'll deal with your brother." "No," Delilah said firmly. "We face him together." "I'm not that frightened girl anymore, Owen." Owen looked like he wanted to argue, but the determination in Delilah's eyes stopped him. "Together, then," he agreed. "But stay behind me." They approached the cabin cautiously. Thomas stood on the porch, his appearance much changed from when Delilah had last seen him. He was thinner, his once handsome face now weathered and marked with a scar that ran from his eye to his jaw. But his eyes were the same, cold and calculating. "Hello, sister," he called as they approached. "You're looking well. Marriage agrees with you, it seems." "What are you doing here, Thomas?" Delilah asked, proud that her voice remained steady. "Can't a man visit his only sister?" "His nephew." Thomas's gaze shifted to Owen. "You must be the husband. Owen Garrett, isn't it? I've heard about you. The honorable cowboy who rescued my sister from her wicked brother." "State your business and leave," Owen said, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. "You're not welcome here." Thomas spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. "I've come to make peace." "Is that so hard to believe? Prison changes a man, makes him think about his life, his choices." "You escaped from prison," Delilah pointed out. "That doesn't speak of a changed man." Thomas shrugged. "A misunderstanding. I was wrongfully convicted, after all. A brother trying to protect his sister, painted as a monster by a town eager for someone to blame." "You are a monster," Delilah said, anger flaring hot and bright inside her. "You beat me, controlled me, treated me like property. And now you have the audacity to come here, to my home, where my son, yes, my nephew." Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I look forward to meeting him. Family is important, don't you think?" Owen stepped forward, his face hard with fury. "You will never go near my son. Never. Do you understand?" Thomas's hand moved to his coat, but before he could draw whatever weapon he had concealed there, the sound of horses approaching made them all turn. Sheriff Williams, accompanied by 2 deputies, rode into the yard. "Thomas Nelson," the sheriff called, dismounting with surprising agility for a man his age. "You're under arrest for escaping custody and violating the terms of your sentence." Thomas's face darkened with rage. For a moment, Delilah thought he might try to fight, but surrounded by armed men, he seemed to think better of it. "This isn't finished," he said, his eyes boring into Delilah's. "Family is forever, sister. Remember that." As the deputies led Thomas away, Delilah sagged against Owen, the tension draining from her body. "It's never going to end, is it?" she whispered. "He'll keep coming back." Owen held her close, his heartbeat strong and steady against her cheek. "We'll face whatever comes, Delilah. Together." That night, after checking on a sleeping David for the 3rd time, Delilah joined Owen on the porch of their cabin. The stars blazed overhead in the clear Montana sky, and the distant howl of a wolf echoed through the hills. "I've been thinking," Owen said, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the chill. "Maybe it's time for a change." Delilah looked at him questioningly. "What kind of change?" "I've had an offer for the livery. Good money, enough to buy a ranch north of here. More land, better water rights, room for the horses to run." He took her hand. "Room for our family to grow, away from memories and threats." Delilah considered the idea. Bannack had become home, the first place where she had known true happiness. But it was also the place where Thomas had found her twice now. Perhaps a fresh start would be best for all of them. "What about Mrs. Fleming? Sarah? The community here? They'd understand," Owen said. "And it's not so far that we couldn't visit. Think about it, Delilah. A new beginning, on our terms." As Delilah looked up at the vast Montana sky, she felt a sense of possibility unfurling within her like a flower opening to the sun. "Yes," she said, turning to smile at her husband. "Let's do it. Let's make a new beginning." The ranch, situated in a valley nestled between rolling hills, was everything Owen had described and more. The main house, built of sturdy logs with a stone foundation, stood on a rise overlooking a clear stream that wound through the property. Meadows stretched in all directions, perfect for the horses they planned to raise. They moved in the spring of 1870, when David was a sturdy toddler with his father's charm and his mother's determination. The journey was long, but the reward at the end, a home that was truly theirs, chosen freely and built on love rather than fear, was worth every hardship. Life on the ranch settled into a rhythm dictated by the seasons and the needs of their growing operation. Owen's reputation as a horseman brought buyers from as far away as California, and Delilah's skill with breeding decisions proved invaluable as they built their stock. They hired a few hands to help with the work, but kept the operation small enough to manage themselves. One of those hands, a young man named Michael who had a way with the more difficult horses, became almost like family over time. "He reminds me of you," Delilah told Owen one evening as they watched Michael patiently working with a skittish mare. "That same gentleness underneath the strength." Owen smiled, pulling her close. "High praise indeed, coming from you." Their family grew too. In the autumn of 1871, Delilah gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Owen's mother. She had Delilah's golden hair and sweet disposition, and from the moment she was placed in David's arms, he appointed himself her protector and champion. News came occasionally from Bannack. Mrs. Fleming wrote regularly, keeping them informed of town gossip and developments. In one such letter, in the summer of 1872, she included news that made Delilah's blood run cold. Thomas Nelson had been released from prison after serving his full sentence for the escape attempt. He was asking about you, Mrs. Fleming wrote. I didn't tell him anything, of course, but thought you should know. Sheriff Williams is keeping an eye on him, but says there's not much he can do legally if Nelson behaves himself. Owen found Delilah sitting on the porch, the letter crumpled in her hand. What is it, love? She handed him the letter without a word. Owen read it quickly, his expression growing grim. He doesn't know where we are, he said, trying to reassure her. And even if he found out, we're not defenseless here. Delilah nodded, though the old fear had resurged with a vengeance. That night, she dreamed of Thomas finding their ranch, of violence and loss so vivid that she woke gasping for breath, reaching for Owen in the darkness. He's not here, Owen soothed, holding her close. We're safe, all of us. For a time, it seemed he was right. Summer turned to fall, and fall to winter, with no sign of Thomas. The children thrived, the ranch prospered, and Delilah began to hope that perhaps Thomas had finally moved on with his life. Then, on a bright spring morning in 1873, as Delilah was hanging laundry in the yard while the children played nearby, a rider appeared on the road leading to the ranch. Something about the way he sat his horse, straight-backed and proud, sent a chill of recognition through her. David, she called, keeping her voice calm with effort. Take Lizzie inside. Right now. David, nearly 5 years old and unusually perceptive, must have sensed her fear because he didn't argue, just scooped up his 2-year-old sister and carried her toward the house. Delilah moved to stand between the children and the approaching rider, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it would burst from her chest. As the rider drew closer, Delilah's worst fears were confirmed. Thomas Nelson had found them at last. Hello, sister, he called, reining in his horse a few yards away. Lovely place you have here. Delilah said nothing, her eyes darting to the barn where Owen was working with one of the new colts. She prayed he would notice the unfamiliar horse and come to investigate. Nothing to say to your only brother? Thomas dismounted, tethering his horse to a fence post. He looked older, the scar on his face more pronounced, but his eyes were the same cold and calculating. After I've come all this way to see you and your beautiful family? What do you want, Thomas? Delilah asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Want? I want what's mine. Thomas stepped closer, and Delilah fought the urge to back away. You're my sister, Delilah. My responsibility. These children are my blood. Family should be together, don't you think? My family is together, Delilah said, her hand reaching for the small knife she kept in her apron pocket for cutting twine. My husband, my children, and me. You're not part of that, Thomas. You never will be. Thomas's face darkened with anger. That cowboy has poisoned you against me. Your own brother, who only wanted what was best for you. What was best for me? Delilah's voice rose in disbelief. You beat me, controlled my every move, treated me like property. That's not love, Thomas. That's not family. You needed discipline, Thomas snapped. After our parents died, you were wild, ungrateful. I did what had to be done. Delilah shook her head, a sad clarity coming over her. You're sick, Thomas. You need help. But I can't give it to you, and I won't let you hurt my children the way you hurt me. Thomas's hand moved to his belt, where a hunting knife was sheathed. I didn't want it to come to this, Delilah. But if I can't have my family back, maybe no one should. Before he could draw the knife, a voice rang out from the direction of the barn. That's far enough, Nelson. Owen stood a few yards away, a rifle aimed steady at Thomas's chest. Behind him, Michael held another gun, his young face hard with determination. Thomas froze, his hand still on the knife. This doesn't concern you, Garrett. This is family business. Delilah is my family, Owen said, his voice like steel. My wife, the mother of my children, and you're trespassing on our land. Thomas looked from Owen to Delilah, calculation in his eyes. You think you've won, don't you? Found yourself a protector, built a new life. But you'll always be mine, Delilah. Always. No, Thomas, Delilah said, a strange calm settling over her. I was never yours, and I never will be. Now leave our land, and don't come back. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Thomas slowly raised his hands, a bitter smile twisting his scarred face. This isn't over, he said, the same words he had spoken years ago in the Bannack courtroom. Yes, Delilah said firmly. It is. Thomas mounted his horse, his movements deliberate, his eyes never leaving Delilah's face. One day, sister, when you least expect it. If you ever come near my family again, Owen said, the rifle still trained on Thomas, it will be the last thing you do. That's a promise. Thomas's only response was a mocking salute before he turned his horse and rode away, not looking back. Owen waited until Thomas was out of sight before lowering the rifle and rushing to Delilah's side. Are you all right? The children? They're inside, Delilah said, suddenly feeling weak as the adrenaline drained from her body. I sent them in when I saw him coming. Owen pulled her close, his heart beating fast against her cheek. He won't come back, he promised. And if he does, we'll be ready. That night, after the children were asleep, Owen and Delilah sat by the fire, discussing what to do next. Michael had ridden to the nearest town to alert the sheriff about Thomas's threats, but they knew that law enforcement could only do so much in the vast territory. Maybe we should move again, Delilah suggested, though the thought of leaving the home they had built together filled her with sadness. Owen shook his head. No, we can't keep running. This is our home, Delilah. We've put down roots here, built something good. I won't let your brother take that from us. Delilah looked around the cozy room, at the evidence of their life together, David's wooden horse on the shelf, Lizzie's rag doll by the fireplace, the quilt Mrs. Fleming had sent for their wedding draped over the back of a chair. This was home, in a way no place had been since her parents died. You're right, she said, reaching for Owen's hand. We stay, we fight if we have to, but we don't run. Owen squeezed her hand, his eyes full of love and pride. That's my brave girl. The next few weeks were tense, with everyone on the ranch watching for any sign of Thomas's return. Owen and Michael took turns keeping watch at night, and Delilah never let the children out of sight during the day. But as time passed with no sign of Thomas, the vigilance gradually eased, though never entirely disappeared. Life on the ranch continued. The horses needed tending, crops needed planting, and children needed raising. Delilah found that the best defense against fear was the simple rhythm of daily life, the laughter of her children, the steadfast love of her husband, the satisfaction of work well done. Summer came, bringing with it the news that their family would grow again. Delilah was expecting their third child. The announcement brought joy to the household, especially to David and Elizabeth, who were excited about a new brother or sister. A boy, I think, Owen said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the hills in shades of gold and purple. His hand rested on Delilah's still flat stomach, a gesture that had become familiar during her previous pregnancies. How can you possibly know that? Delilah asked, amused. Owen shrugged, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Just a feeling. But boy or girl, as long as the baby is healthy and you're well, that's all that matters. Delilah leaned against him, content in a way she had never thought possible when she first stumbled into Bannack all those years ago. I never imagined I could be this happy, she confessed. After everything with Thomas, I thought I was broken somehow. That I didn't deserve happiness. Owen tightened his arm around her. You deserve every happiness, Delilah. You always did. As autumn approached, bringing cooler days and the promise of harvest, Delilah received a letter that changed everything. It was from Mrs. Fleming, her handwriting as precise as ever despite her advancing age. I thought you should know, she wrote, that Thomas Nelson was found dead last week in a mining camp near Virginia City. There was a dispute over cards, according to Sheriff Williams, who identified the body. He is buried in the cemetery there, with no marker. I'm sorry if this brings painful memories, but I thought you would want to know that you are truly free now. Delilah read the letter twice, her hands shaking. Thomas was dead. The threat that had hung over her life for so long was finally gone. She should feel relief, perhaps even satisfaction, but what she felt instead was a profound sadness, not for the man Thomas had become, but for the brother she had lost long before, when bitterness and cruelty had twisted his soul beyond recognition. Owen found her sitting by the stream that ran through their property, the letter in her lap. "Delilah? What's wrong?" Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. Owen read it quickly, then looked at her with concern. "Are you all right?" "I don't know," Delilah admitted. "I should be relieved. Happy even. But all I can think about is how different things could have been if he had made other choices. If he had been the brother I needed after our parents died, instead of what he became." Owen finished for her. "It's all right to mourn what might have been, Delilah. That doesn't make you weak or foolish." Delilah leaned against him, drawing strength from his steady presence as she had so many times before. "He was my brother, Owen. For all his cruelty, all his obsession, he was the last connection to my childhood, to my parents. And now he's gone, buried without even a marker to say he existed." Owen held her as she cried, not for the man who had terrorized her, but for the brother who had taught her to fish when she was small, who had carried her on his shoulders at county fairs, who had, in his own way, loved her before grief and resentment poisoned that love. As the tears subsided, Delilah felt a weight lifting from her heart, a weight she had carried for so long that she had almost forgotten what it was like to live without it. Thomas was gone, and with him, the fear that had shadowed even her happiest moments. "I'm free," she whispered, the words strange on her tongue. "Truly free." Owen kissed her forehead gently. "You always were, Delilah. From the moment you found the courage to leave him, you were free. This just makes it official." The baby was born in late January of 1874, a boy, as Owen had predicted, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually match the warm brown of his mother's. They named him Thomas, a decision that surprised everyone except Owen. "He deserves a better legacy than your brother left," Owen explained when Michael questioned the choice. "A chance to make the name mean something good again." Delilah, watching her husband cradle their newborn son with such tenderness, felt her heart swell with love and gratitude. Owen understood, as he always had, that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant reclaiming, redefining, moving forward without letting the past define you. Little Thomas thrived, a happy, robust baby who completed their family in ways they hadn't known were missing. David, now 6 and increasingly interested in the ranch operations, took his role as eldest brother seriously, solemnly explaining to baby Thomas the important things he needed to know about horses, hawks, and how to avoid Lizzie when she was in a mood. Elizabeth, at 3, was less impressed with the new arrival, but could be found singing to him when she thought no one was watching, her small face serious as she instructed him on the proper way to hold a doll. The years that followed were good ones for the Garrett family. The horse breeding operation prospered, with their stock gaining a reputation that brought buyers from as far away as California and Texas. The ranch expanded, with new pastures cleared and additional hands hired to help with the work. Delilah, no longer haunted by the specter of her brother's return, blossomed fully into the strong, capable woman Owen had always seen beneath the fear. She took on more responsibility for the business side of the ranch, her keen mind for figures and negotiations proving invaluable as they grew. Owen, watching his wife negotiate with a particularly difficult buyer from San Francisco, found himself marveling at how far they had come from that first meeting outside the Goodrich Hotel in Bannack. The frightened young woman with the bruised face had become a confident, respected rancher's wife, mother to 3 healthy children, and his partner in every sense of the word. "You married well, Garrett," said Hank, the blacksmith from Bannack who had stood as Owen's best man and now visited occasionally to help with the more specialized metal work needed on the ranch. "She's quite a woman. Don't I know it?" Owen agreed, his chest swelling with pride as Delilah concluded the deal with a handshake, the buyer looking slightly dazed. "Best thing that ever happened to me," walking into Bannack that day. In the summer of 1880, as the Garrett family celebrated David's 12th birthday with a gathering that included neighbors, ranch hands, and old friends from Bannack, Delilah found herself standing apart for a moment, watching the scene with a heart full to bursting. David, tall for his age and showing signs of the handsome man he would become, was demonstrating his roping skills to an appreciative audience. Elizabeth, 8 years old and already showing her mother's determination, was organizing the younger children in a game of her own devising. And little Thomas, 6 and the spitting image of his father, was following Owen around like a shadow, soaking up every word and gesture. Mrs. Fleming, now stooped with age but still sharp as a tack, came to stand beside Delilah. "Quite a family you've built here, my dear." "Yes," Delilah agreed, her eyes finding Owen across the yard. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and smiled, the same smile that had warmed her heart for more than a decade. "More than I ever dreamed possible." Mrs. Fleming patted her hand. "Your brother was wrong about many things, but most of all about you. He thought you were weak, someone to be controlled. He never saw your strength." "Owen did," Delilah said softly. "From the beginning. Even when I couldn't see it myself." Later that night, after the guests had gone and the children were asleep, Owen found Delilah standing on the porch, looking up at the star-filled Montana sky. He came to stand beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked, a question he had asked countless times over the years, always with the same genuine interest in her answer. "Yes," Delilah said, leaning into him. "Completely." And it was true. The journey from that first desperate day in Bannack to this moment had been long and sometimes difficult, but every step had brought her closer to this, a life built on love rather than fear, on mutual respect rather than domination, on the steady foundation of a man who had looked at a battered, frightened woman and seen someone worth fighting for. "I love you, Owen Garrett," she said, turning in his arms to face him. "Today and always." Owen's smile, as warm and genuine as it had been the day they met, lit up his face. "And I love you, Delilah Garrett. Today and always." As they stood together under the vast Montana sky, Delilah thought of the words Owen had spoken all those years ago when she had first told him about her brother's abuse. "Then he's not a real man," Owen had said, his simple statement cutting through years of fear and shame. In the end, that was the truth that had set her free, not Thomas's death, but the realization that there were good men in the world, men like Owen who understood that strength wasn't measured by the ability to dominate or control, but by the courage to love and protect, to build rather than destroy. And in finding such a man, Delilah had discovered her own strength, a strength that had always been within her, waiting for the chance to grow and flourish in the light of love. As the years continued to pass, the Garrett Ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. Their children grew into fine adults, David taking over more of the ranch operations, Elizabeth marrying a young doctor from Helena and establishing a home of her own nearby, and Thomas showing a talent for law that led him to study in the East before returning to Montana to practice. Delilah and Owen grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year, each challenge faced and overcome. The gold rush days of Bannack were long gone, but the town they had met in held a special place in their hearts, and they visited whenever possible, maintaining their friendship with Mrs. Fleming until her peaceful passing in the winter of 1885, on the 20th anniversary of their wedding. As they sat on the porch of the home they had built together, watching their grandchildren play in the yard, Owen took Delilah's hand in his. "Would you do it all again?" he asked, his voice still strong despite the silver threading through his hair. "If you knew everything that would happen, the good and the bad." Delilah looked at him, at the face she had loved for 2 decades, the lines etched by laughter and worry, by sun and wind, by a life fully lived. "In a heartbeat," she said without hesitation. "Every moment, Owen. I wouldn't change a thing." And as the sun set over the Montana hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Delilah knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just safety or security, but true happiness, a life built on love, respect, and the courage to believe in second chances. In the end, that was her brother's greatest gift to her, though he would never have seen it that way. By driving her away, he had set her on a path that led to Owen, to a love that healed rather than hurt, to a family built on kindness rather than fear. And for that, despite everything, she could finally find it in her heart to forgive him. As night fell and the stars came out, Delilah and Owen remained on the porch, hand in hand, surrounded by the life they had created together, a life that had begun with fear but had blossomed into something beautiful and enduring, a testament to the healing power of love and the strength of a woman who had found the courage to break free.